Okay, so before we really get into writing essays in this class, it is important to understand what the essay is and how to actually go about writing the essay. So this is a kind of a two-part lecture where we're first going to talk about the components of the essay, what actually makes an essay, and then we're going to talk about the writing process, how you get from a starting point of you've been handed an assignment to a finished point of a well-polished college-level essay. So I'm going to do this in the structure of just kind of almost like I would if I were in the classroom writing on the whiteboard, except I'm going to use Word to kind of put my notes on paper here so you can follow along as I'm talking. Okay, so in order to understand essay writing, first you need to know what an essay is. And basically, an essay is a form of prose. So there's different styles of writing. There's poetry, prose, and prose is basically like a narrative style. And generally an essay is going to cover one singular topic. And this can be a topic of anything, economics, history, literature, whatever have you. Now, the purpose of essay writing in college, or rather the reason why professors will often assign essays, is a test can only tell us that you can memorize information, but an essay tells us, do you understand that information? Do you understand things like its implications, its outcomes, causes, effects, importance or significance of those causes and effects or the particular events, importance or significance of how some things are similar or different to other things, those sort of things. So first and foremost, when you think about writing an essay, you need to think about going beyond just what you see on the surface, beyond just, oh, okay, I know A plus B equals C. What's the meaning behind that? So an essay is almost like a discussion. You're just having it with your reader through the form of writing instead of sitting down face to face with somebody. Okay, so there are some basic components to essay writing, or at least these are the components that your instructors or professors are going to expect to see in your essay writing. And I'm going to kind of, instead of kind of going in order from beginning to end, like what would you see at the beginning of an essay to the end of the essay, I'm actually going to start with the most important components of the essay and then everything that helps build into that most important component of the essay. So perhaps the most important component of any essay is your thesis statement. All right, so what is that? Well, a thesis statement is the controlling idea of any essay. It's the main idea, the overall observation or argument that you are trying to communicate to the audience or the reader. All right, so a thesis statement is generally going to be one sentence. It's going to be at the end of the introduction. And it'll be about anywhere from 15 to 30 words in length. This is just a guide. I would say certainly you want it longer than 15 words. Let's say no longer than 45. You don't want to be overly wordy. If your thesis statement's overly wordy, it could be a sign that you're trying to cover too broad or too much of a topic in the assignment requirements. So why is this the most important part of your essay? Well, I think the definition kind of explains that. It's what everything in your essay is going to be supporting. It's what everything goes back to. So it's important that you kind of get that part really well down in your essay, and that way you can follow everything back that you talk about in your essay to that main idea. Now, I mentioned introduction, and the introduction paragraph is another important component of essays. Basically introduces the topic of the essay in an engaging and meaningful way. The purpose of the introduction paragraph is to engage your reader's attention. So typically this means you want to start a paragraph with something called a hook, where you grab your reader's attention. This can be the first sentence or the first couple or few sentences. And you can use things like an interesting quote, startling statistic, personal observation, or well, I think that pretty much covers it. I mean, those are basically the three most common hooks I see that tend to be the most effective. But basically, just something that grabs your reader's attention and pulls them into your essay. And then there's a second part of introduction called background context. And this basically clues the reader in to what the essay is going to be about, and provides some basic information about the topic. Why is the topic important? Any important historical information or important people, figures, current attitudes about the topic. Those are all fair game as far as establishing the background and context of the topic. And while we're talking about context, just to kind of define what context is, because you're going to hear that a lot in college. Context is basically one definition I read one time in a textbook that has always stuck with me. It's the web of circumstances surrounding any topic, issue, or phrase. So basically, context means the current climate or understanding or definition, its history, the current attitude or mood, considering that term, word, phrase, concept, idea, argument. But everything, we know always has a context about it, always has circumstances that affect it and perhaps change it one way or the other. All right, and then the last part we started out this with, the last part of your introduction is always going to be the thesis statement. And the reason why it's important to end your introduction with the thesis statement is, honestly, it just makes the thesis statement much more easily found by your professors and instructors. That's probably where they're going to go to, is in your introduction paragraph to look for it. So unless you're otherwise instructed by your professor, place your thesis statement at the end of your introduction. This will kind of cement the foundation of your essay and help lead into your first main idea that you're going to talk about and use to support your thesis statement. Okay, so the next important component of any essay are body paragraphs. And oftentimes body paragraphs, a common definition for them, building blocks of an essay. This is where you are going to support, discuss, provide examples, provide details, provide evidence, and any other important information in support of your thesis statement. So the whole point of your body paragraphs here is to support your thesis statement. All roads lead back to the thesis statement, so keep that in mind. This is why transitional elements that we're going to talk about here in a little bit are important, because they help link your ideas in your body paragraphs back to your thesis statement. Alright, so what are body paragraphs made up of? Well, typically the first one or two sentences is going to have to do with introducing the topic of your body paragraph. So the first or second sentence is going to be the topic sentence. Sometimes, and I say the first or second, sometimes the first sentence is kind of a transitionary transition sentence that kind of helps transition from whatever previous idea you were discussing into the one that you're going to discuss currently. And if you hear in the background, it's storming right now, so you're hearing the rumbles of thunder. But in any case, the first sentence or second sentence, however you feel it's necessary, is going to be your topic sentence, which basically indicates the topic and concern of the paragraph. And usually the topic sentence is also going to link the idea being discussed in the paragraph back to the thesis statement. Right. So, like I said, and you can see I'm really emphasizing this idea of helping to link and drive everything home in your paper, in your essay, back to your thesis statement. All right. And then after your topic sentence, you're going to have supporting statements that support the topic sentence. Basically, they kind of further discuss the meaning and intent of the topic sentence. So it's not like you state the topic sentence and then hop right on into your first piece of evidence. Think about how you're going to bridge your details, your examples, your support, all back into your topic sentence, which then leads back into your, you guessed it, thesis statement. All right, so you have supporting statements, and then you'll have examples, details, evidence, facts, possibly some statistics, as we get further on in this course. When we first start out, most of what you're going to be writing is from personal experience, personal knowledge, and understanding. But as you get further on, you're probably going to branch out and want to start looking up sources. We'll talk about how to use sources properly to avoid plagiarism later on. But in any case, most paragraphs are going to contain, at the very least, detailed examples, anything that helps support, illustrate, demonstrate the point you're trying to make in that paragraph in support of your thesis statement. I don't really have a name for these sentences in between. I mean, you could kind of look at them as like sub-support or sub-support sentences. But in any case, it's kind of the filler. It's the meat of the paragraph. It gets into the nitty-gritty details. And then you also have concluding statements. I feel this is one area that students kind of miss out on when they're developing their paragraphs, is closing those paragraphs out before moving on to the next one. But this is actually a very important tool to, again, help kind of readerize what you just said and connect everything back to the thesis statement. So concluding statements are usually concluding statement or statements, the last one or two sentences in the paragraph that re-emphasizes the idea of the paragraph in support of the thesis statement. Okay, so you bring it all home and then you transition on into your next paragraph. So if you were thinking about, okay, well, what does all this look like? I mean, how would I design it? So if I were going to outline a paragraph, I would say transition statement if necessary, topic sentence, which states the topic of the paragraph, first statement, supporting topic sentence, examples, details, let's say just examples and details for the time being, in support of first statement, second statement, supporting topic sentence, examples and details in support of second statement. I could go on. This is how far you go in a paragraph depends upon really what all it's going to take to fulfill your needs of that paragraph. Now, I will say a general guideline for any paragraph as far as the length, 8 to 15 sentences. If your paragraph really goes beyond 15 sentences, then chances are you're trying to cover 2 different topics in one paragraph and you need to split that. Or that topic is very broad for that paragraph and you just need to find a good place to break it. So that it's just not going on and on and on forever. That loses your reader's attention. So I could go on to a third statement, or I could make my concluding statements. Sorry about that. And then, transition to next paragraph after that. And like I said, lengthwise, some of that's really going to depend on how detailed your examples are. Some examples are going to need to have more details than others. And I'm going to talk about, really when we get into comparison and contrast writing, how to use and develop examples. It's not that it's not going to be necessary for narrative writing, but basically you're writing one big example, which is a story about yourself, and we'll talk about that when we get to the narrative writing essay. Alright, so that's basically the bare bones of how you build a paragraph, what a paragraph is made up of. Alright, so next major component is conclusion paragraph. And I find that this is one area that students struggle with. They just kind of, a lot of times, will throw a couple of sentences at the end of their essay and be like, oh, I'm done. Good to go. Let's move on. But really, your conclusion paragraph is very important because it's your last chance to make a strong, lasting impression on your reader. i.e. your professor. So you want to go out with a bang. So the best way to handle conclusion paragraphs, start by restating your thesis statement. Now that doesn't mean restating it word for word. That means restating it in a different way, but still getting at the idea behind your thesis statement. Summarize your main ideas. Oops. Oh. And stick to this in 1 to 2 sentences. You don't want your entire conclusion just being a summary of your main ideas. And I know this is something that typically gets talked about in high school, you know, just summarize your main ideas and you're good, but at the college level it's a little different. You want to go beyond that because you want to get to this third part of the conclusion, which is leave a lasting impression. Basically, leave a lasting impression means expressing to the audience or the reader, why was this important? Why was your topic important, or your argument, your observation? What implications could it possibly have for the reader? You know, what are some possible long-lasting effects? Some things that this situation, if you're talking about a situation, could cause, things like that. So think about leaving a lasting impression as being forward-thinking. What are you going to do to have your reader walk away and remember this, remember what they learned or what you argued about in your essay, depending on what your purpose is. And then last but not least is the title. We want to make sure that titles for your essays in college are creative, thoughtful. Don't title your essay the title of the assignment, or don't title it as simply the topic of your essay. Go beyond that. You know, you want a title. I like to compare a title to a movie poster. How is your title going to make the reader purchase a ticket to read your essay? All right, so be creative and thoughtful with your titles. All right, so this was part 1 of talking about essays. I'm going to split this up so that way you can have some time to perhaps digest or go back and review this. And then in part 2, I'm going to discuss the writing process, how you get from assignment to finished, polished, college level product. So stay tuned for the next episode.